Hello everybody and welcome to the start of the Smite SPL Summer Split. That video that you just saw is going to be more than exciting considering that these teams are actually going to be the ones trying to qualify with this split for DreamHack Valencia. My name's Taco and I'll be joined today by F-Dot.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Really excited to get here with the beginning of the Summer Split. We did spring and then we kind of just sort of hung out, but we're back at it and I'm ready to be excited again.
And I mean, exciting is definitely the name of the day, considering we're going to have some very fun matchups coming your way, guys. We're going to be starting things off over in EU with Team Dignitas versus Elevate, and all around, that's just going to be a very fun matchup. And then, of course, that'll be funneling into a very anticipated matchup as well with Enix versus the Poppies. Tom, how you feeling?
I'm excited to see these European teams go at it. Obviously, the Poppies brand new to the league, but not brand new to Smite. A lot of fans have really excited to see what they can do on the big stage. And then going ahead forward later on, we've got North America, Monkey Madness, Flashpoint, and then LG and ALG.
I mean, NA, a lot of people, of course, are looking forward to that, but EU will be the starting point. Right now, none of these teams have any points to their names. That is what today is all about, trying to secure a couple of victories to see who's going to be able to come out on top on the debut day of the SPL Summer Split.
You know, realistically, though, looking at the way those teams are kind of set up with Obey on the top and everybody else on the bottom, I kind of think that's a little close to
EU
reality.
Preference this time around?
I mean, obviously, did you see any last split? I think EU is clearly the better region right now.
Just gotta try and move on from that. But I know that a lot of people are definitely looking forward to these EU matchups. Like we said, it is going to be Team Dignitas versus Elevate, and of course, you can't have Dignitas without being able to take a look at QvoFred. That guy is by far a massive standout point for the team.
Yeah, I mean, QvoFred has been a strong player for a number of years, and here coming on to where Team Dignitas leaving his long-time roster, right? I mean, he was playing next to Lobster for 3 years or so. So he finally leaves the squad. He finds himself on Team Dignitas, and people were talking with adapting in a quote-unquote slump, his team not really. They were talking, is QvoFred the best jungler in the world come the end of last year? So you move towards this year with a better squad, he's just looking that much better.
And he's had zero issues whatsoever with maintaining his dominance in this jungle role, especially, like you mentioned, Tom, just being aided by the rest of this roster. It is such a powerful roster. You've got variety in the solo lane. Of course, you can always have Trixtank to fall back on.
Right.
They've been bros forever. And so it's just so easy for this team and Qvo especially to shine. But across the way, he's got to deal with Nika.
Oh, man, you didn't let me do it. Okay, Nika's a new guy. I wanted to say he might have zero problems, but he's got Zyrhoes problems. Working out in the mid lane hasn't been the best point for the jungler QvoFred. Come on, give me a point. But you're right, Nika across the way, certainly interesting is the word I'm going to use for Nika. He kind of came out and played slightly above average in that solo lane in his rookie season. And a number of people were really high on him, myself included. I really liked what I saw. And then, honestly, poor Nika. He kind of was just on a bad team and had to swap positions around a zillion different times, finally settling on the jungle, which I think is his preferred role. And we've seen some nice stuff out of him. Listen, I'm not calling the guy bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's going to have to put on his dancing shoes if he wants to match QvoFred.
Kind of a jack of all trades, even, considering that he's had to deal with this. I mean, he's been swapping roles very consistently throughout the teams that he's been playing for, and so that can be kind of difficult to transition with.
There's two routes to go when you wind up starting your career like this. You either go the Sun Touch route where you play multiple roles and just kind of fizzle, or you go the Whirlwind route where you play multiple roles, find your own, and then proceed to be a great star. Now that we see him in the jungle, now that we see Nika in the jungle, this seems to be his role. Will he Whirlwind and hurry up to become one of the top, or will he just kind of, you know, Sun Touch it out is really the question that I want to know. And looking here, I think we've got a good shot for him to be more Whirlwind than anything else.
Well, I mean, especially this game will be a very good telling point for Nika to try and figure out where he's established in the scene, or especially in the role facing off against Dignitas. But, of course, we've been talking about these two teams, but I know that you guys are more than ready to see this matchup, so we're going to go ahead and let the Tasters take it away.
Thank you very much. Taco and Toli ready to go here with the first game of the SPL Summer Split. Really excited to have you along. I'm Aggro, this is Toli, and Totally, it's finally here, man. Summer Split's ready to go, and there's a good matchup to start it off.
Absolutely. Team Dignitas versus Elevate. Two different tales of the spectrum, I would say, whereas Dignitas performed really well in the last Master Split, losing to Obey Alliance in the finals. Elevate didn't have that much success, but their new revitalized roster could lead them to more success in the beginning of this Summer Split.
It's true, a little bit of a different look for them. Let's get ready. Picks and bans for game number 1 between Dignitas and Elevate. And as you heard them talk about on the desk, I'm really looking at this jungle matchup here, Toli. How is Nika going to do? I think we could safely say that this is Nika's best roster he's ever been a part of. Elevate has so much potential. How is he going to fit into that?
Absolutely. He's flexible, but there could be a point in time when you're too flexible. You need to find your true identity and stick with it, and then keep progressing within that role. Nika's been fluctuating between so many different roles. Now in the jungle for Elevate, we'll see if this is going to last throughout this split.
Dignitas going to take a jungler and a soul laner off the board, and then first pick that Osiris for variety. This is what I think we're going to see quite a bit of early on in the Summer Split here. Ban Bellona, pick Osiris. Or you could ban Osiris and take Bellona, but it's one or the other.
I was about to say you could do the vice versa effect, and these two gods with their AoE in-hand cleave attacks makes it so easy with the Death's Toll to be able to have complete lane dominance. And speaking of that lane dominance in the solo lane, you're going to have Cernunnos for Elevate in that dual lane.
And the Terra as well, though that isn't necessarily penciled in there for Dardez. Could be going to the solo lane for no numbers. Have to wait and see. Soul going to be the selection. It's probably for Zyrhoes in that mid lane. I mean, he's like the Soul player right now, right?
Absolutely. He's been talking about it before at the Masters Land, just how much damage this goddess can provide when you build a little bit of magical power between the Stellar Burst and that Supernova, just doing a number of damage, especially if getting off to a great start, you go for that Doom Orb, you're pretty safe in that backline, and then you provide that big damage in those team fights.
Wukong going to be the selection for Elevate right before the ban phase, basically locking that Terra in for Dardez in the Guardian role. And immediately Elevate turns towards the Hunters. They already have theirs with the Cernunnos. They're trying to take Hu Yi away from Arkkyl, and can't say I blame him, Toli. I mean, he played these two gods, Cernunnos and Hu Yi, beautifully at the Masters Land.
Absolutely. So targeting that option away from them makes it a little bit more risky for Team Dignitas with what strategy they want to go for. But surprising, Elevate picking the Sun Wukong so early in the drafting phase. This is not a normal god that you see in the solo lane in Season 4. And considering Elevate is second pick, they have that last pick option. That could have been held until the last pick. But now with this Vulcan lock-in, that means the last pick is going to be the jungle.
That's true. But Sun Wukong did see some recent buffs, so it could be maybe Elevate's valuing them pretty highly. Like you mentioned, Vulcan there for Nulisa. Geb going to be the defensive support here for Team Dignitas. They've got an interesting mix of early and late game, a little bit more late game with that Ram selection for Arkkyl, but variety is really the only early game that Dignitas has on that roster. Is that enough to carry this team composition through the early stages?
It depends if QvoFred is going to sit in that lane with variety. Osiris needs a little bit of assistance to get off to a great start because Sun Wukong can play really safe in that solo lane, can easily clear the wave with that magic control, which is probably why No Numbers elected to go for the Sun Wukong, trying to just clear it safely under the tower. But if QvoFred can sit in that lane a little bit, look for a little bit of pressure, poke out the Sun Wukong, look to start invading those buffs.
Well, here we go, getting ready to go into game number 1 of the Summer Split between Dignitas and Elevate. Rosters are all set. This Naja pick here for Nika, high risk, high reward. I mean, he's not waiting to see, you know, he's not dipping his toe in the water to see how the jungle is. This is a cannonball right in.
Well, first game of the day, first game of the SPL Summer Split. Nika trying to start things off with a bang, paired up with Nulisa's Vulcan. Great wombo combo potential. Once you take somebody into the sky, Nulisa has all the time in the world to set up her ultimate.
The only thing that I'm looking at with this this combination is that it could backfire on them if they target Zyrhoes with it specifically. If you could pop that Disapparate and then start to get into that corporeal form, by the time you come down from that Windfire Weir's ultimate, you'll be immune, and that's 2 ultimates down for what would likely not be a kill. So it's something that Elevate and Nika in particular really have to pay attention to, is making sure you CC Zyrhoes and getting up into the sky before that Disapparate comes out.
I love what Dignitas are doing here. They're establishing lane dominance in the middle lane, making it more difficult for Nika to get in position to start in-handing those melee. Oh, dual lane though. Trix taking a lot of damage.
Arkkyl going to be able to clear the wave a little bit earlier, though. This is what we're used to seeing from Ram, is that first wave in particular almost always goes the way of the team that has the Ram, just because of how good having 5 astral arrows in your quiver is.
It's not too much damage at level 1, but because you have 5 of them, it makes it so easy compared to a lot of other hunters, especially at level 1. And as a result of all this play, there's enough time for Dignitas to even grab their own red buff, neglecting the wave primarily.
And I like this decision because you could go and invade like we see so often if you get that initial wave pressure, but this is a lot safer, and it puts Dignitas' dual lane in a much easier position to pick up that wave that they were letting go of for the time being, whereas if you invade, it's a long walk back. You're usually losing quite a bit of those minions to the tower. A lot of starting camps, getting a little bit of it, and then coming back to finish them off. Dignitas does that to Nika's speed buff and to the fire elementals, getting the minis, and then coming back to finish off the big one.
But surprisingly enough, QvoFred solo invaded that speed buff. They had so much lane pressure in middle and in the solo lane because of Osiris versus Wukong matchup that there was enough time for QvoFred to invest and invade into the enemy speed. And not only that, Zyrhoes was still grabbing all the farm in the mid lane, not losing any sort of gold or experience. And this is why Dignitas are getting off to that slight lead at the 2-minute mark.
Yeah, a little bit of a lead in both gold and experience thus far for the veteran Dignitas, though they haven't been together quite as long as they've been in the league. Arkkyl really the only one who doesn't have a really storied history in the SPL, but certainly has proven that he can play with these dudes.
A very quiet player in the scene, being recognized by such highly notable players such as Zyrhoes, Trixtank, QvoFred, even Variety now making a name for himself in Season 3 before he was flirting with the SPL for quite a long time. You know, didn't have the greatest success in Season 1 or 2, but now, ever since Season 3 with his time in Obey Alliance, something just turned on its head, and he's just been an absolute monster.
Ever since, exactly right. And sitting at level 5, as is No Numbers, as Arkkyl and Trixtank box it out in that duo lane after getting control of the Oracle Harpies on that left-hand side. I think that QvoFred on this Nemesis pick, we haven't talked a whole lot about it outside of the fact that it's not particularly strong in the early game, but this is a character that Qvo's played quite a bit of in his pro league career, and a character that I think many might be underestimating. This is a really strong jungler right now.
I'm very familiar with QvoFred's Nemesis, specifically dating back to that launch tournament. Jermain trying to do a little bit of poke onto Arkkyl, but no real concerns here as Trixtank does have that Geb shield, not only cleansing out that CC from Dardez, but providing a little bit of a help.
That was a big shield because Arkyl's roll actually got caught by that stun from coming out of Dardez, so big shield on time there from Trixtank, which is what you expect to see out of the veteran support player. No team taking too much in terms of invades or positioning for an invade quite yet outside of QvoFred on this right-hand side, just waiting for that second speed buff respawn. And this is big because Qvo still has his own speed buff, did a nice job of making sure they overlapped so that he'd have that extra mobility on this invade.
And because of the first primary invade from QvoFred, this is why we see a 4-man rotation in the solo lane.
Variety in a little bit of trouble, rooted out here by Dardez, but Nika misses the ultimate 0 for 1 thus far. Now Nika's the one in a lot of trouble. Lord of the Afterlife's gonna confirm it. First blood goes the way of Team Dignitas. And like we said from the get-go, Toli, Neja is pure risk-reward. You miss the ultimate there, and Nika's gonna pay the price.
2 on 4, and it didn't go in the way of Elevate's favor at all. That ultimate was so huge for Nika. Sometimes you gotta wait for some setups, but if you're gonna take such a risk like that, especially considering Variety had the passive fully stacked at ethereal form, giving him a lot of damage mitigation.
Trixtank gets stunned. Nice double meatball there from nulisa. Force out the purification beads from QvoFred. Zyrhoes is here, made the rotation from the mid lane. Trixtank still has his ultimate, as does as a Zyrhoes, but Dignitas happy with taking that first blood and the buff away from Nika.
And because of the first invade from the speed buff from QvoFred, it eventually led to the blue buff invade earlier on. No Numbers hasn't gotten his blue buff yet this game, and as a result, we saw this 4-man rotation from Elevate trying to shut down Team Dignitas' aggression towards those buffs. We talked about it in the pregame where QvoFred on the Nemesis, Variety on the Osiris has so much pressure in the early game that if they committed into that solo lane jungle buff invade, that they would get off to a small lead.
Oh, nice try there out of Trixtank. Goes for the Blink Cataclysm, but that 72 transformations gets No Numbers just out of the ring in time. If No Numbers gets ulted there, I don't know if he falls necessarily just because he has his Somersault Cloud, but getting that ultimate out would have been a pretty big win for Team Dignitas, but the quick reaction time out of the solo laner for Elevate is good enough.
Especially if they could trade ulti for ulti, support versus solo laner, because Variety's ultimate was going to come back up, and with the difference timers of no numbers having to come back for that ultimate, that could allow Variety to play super aggressive in that solo lane, especially with 120 seconds remaining on no numbers' teleport.
No numbers has gone for the Bumba's Mask here, totally 3 on the side of Elevate to only 1 on Team Dignitas. Whereas Variety, he's gone for a different sort of starter item, that Mark of the Vanguard that we see so often. Which do you like more in this situation?
Well, it depends on what you're really trying to get out of the laning phase. It seems that No Numbers doesn't really care about all the poke coming out of Variety, so he's going for the Bumba's Mask so he can do more damage to the jungle camps and receive that health return in case Nika neglects his lane. This allows Wukong to clear a lot more efficiently. His Cudgel and his Master's Will does quite a bit of damage, but you can pair that up with the Bumba's Mask. Now you don't really have to necessarily worry about any sort of invades from Variety.
And Variety does have that ultimate available once more after using it to claim the first blood. First kill here of the summer split. Now No Numbers has to worry about that damage coming out of Variety, but he misses the Lord of the Afterlife, so No Numbers is going to be getting that healing coming out of the Somersault Cloud. That's a big interaction that we didn't really touch on quite yet, is if you can hit Sun Wukong with that Lord of the Afterlife just before, even during the CC immunity channel, he won't be able to heal up in that ultimate.
Absolutely, giving Variety a huge lead, trying to kind of guess where No Numbers was going to go with Lord of the Afterlife. It's not the easiest ability to hit in the world, but there are some small windows that you could take advantage of, and despite not having that ultimate, still going for a poke, recognizing everybody on Elevated is spotted on the mini-map, no pressure against Variety in that solo lane.
Variety forces No Numbers back. Now he picks up that Mark of the Vanguard that he clearly needs, but that was perfect timing because the speed buff has just respawned. Good timing out of Variety to force No Numbers back, and as a result, Elevate, they're not even here. Last time it was a 4-man grouping on the speed. This time, no one shows up in time. QvoFred able to walk away scot-free.
Just a lapse of judgment, I would say, from Elevate. They were too busy and concentrated on that mid lane instead of their own speed buff. Third respawn of the game for Elevate speeds, all going in the favor of QvoFred, getting more momentum under his belt, 2 levels ahead of Nika's Naja. Naja's not one of these gods that can necessarily play very successfully from behind.
Though in the later stages, I think that it's kind of one of those time bombs where eventually Naja's going to get enough damage in order to almost one-shot a Squishy, but at this rate, that's going to be quite a ways off. Though Naja as a character is kind of designed to just blink into the back line and take out a better target than himself. You know what I mean? That's the whole idea as Trixtank gets rooted out here. And there's the Windfire Wheels ultimate, but less damage onto the Geb because of his passive. Nulisa's ultimate is good, but not good enough. Immediately Trixtank lands with the Cataclysm. Zyrhoes throws a Supernova on top just for good measure, but now QvoFred and Arkkyl have made the rotation, coming in. Variety and No Numbers looking to join the fight as well as QvoFred throws that ultimate onto Nulisa. The snipe's coming out. The Aegis is good there from Nika to save his own life for the moment. QvoFred biting off a little bit more than he can handle until a good Geb shield coming out of Trixtank saves a life for a moment. Variety trying to handle Nulisa on the backside as Jermain finds Qvo.
They're going in the backline even more. No Numbers finding his second victim onto Trixtank. Variety did find out Nulisa on the Vulcan. No Numbers in a lot of trouble. Zyrhoes taking him out, so that's going to be a 2-for-2 at the end of the day. And the way that whole started, but you were talking about it, how Nika took up probably the worst target he wanted to in the sky, which was Trixtank. That passive negates the critical in-hands, about 25% effectiveness, and as a result, Naja just does no damage to this support player.
Yeah, and even with Nulisa's ultimate, it still was not enough, but a good rotation from No Numbers, and I think that was more QvoFred going a little bit deeper than necessary more than anything else. I like the idea of throwing out the Nemesis ult and allowing Arkkyl to guarantee some more shots with it and do some more damage, but Qvo caught out a little bit too much, and No Numbers makes him pay. Though, if you're rooting for Team Dignitas, I think you should probably be happy with that trade because you trade your support and jungler for the enemy's solo and mid, so that's a little bit more gold going to Team Dignitas by knocking down No Numbers, who has quite a bit of farm.
Still a decent amount of lead here from Team Dignitas, despite it being a 2-for-2. Not as clean as they would have liked it to be, considering how well they've been playing the rest of the early game, but heading into the 10-minute mark, they have a pretty respectable 2,000 gold lead, 2,000 experience that can still start rotating around as a unit around this jungle side, as long as they have the wards at the necessary locations in these small little choke points and corridors, such as right behind this fire giant. They can look for more of these aggressive plays.
Qvo has the ultimate, not going to use it quite yet, just a slice of dice onto No Numbers. This time another 4-man grouping from Elevate around the speed buff, but Zyrhoes and Trixtank might be on their way here, Tolly.
And the way QvoFred has been playing this Nemesis just fits his style so well. It's aggressive and baits a lot of cooldowns because of that Nemesis shield, absorbing a lot of damage and returning a decent amount in return. Trying to defend the speed buff is no numbers, but a blink cataclysm in the mid lane.
Oh, Nika is just gone. Zyrhoes gonna claim his second kill. Beautiful coordination there onto Nika, who continues to be focused out by Team Dignitas. QvoFred used his ultimate and a beautiful initiation there by Trixtank, sets it all up. Now no numbers forced into that Somersault Cloud. Variety didn't even have to use his ultimate. Another win for Team Dig, this time on the right.
Easy poke onto no numbers, not even committing the ultimate onto Variety like you said. QvoFred just wants to get Variety ahead. That is their win condition. Allow this Osiris to get into a better position heading into the mid to late game than no numbers. And surprisingly enough, looking at these two different builds from the Soul Laners, Gladiator Shield on no numbers, providing a little bit of cooldown reduction, physical power, physical protection, and not only to that, you get 2.5% health and mana return on every single ability you use. And with Magic Cudgel being on a 10-second cooldown along with Master's Will, you can easily dive that backline, spam those abilities, and then get all that health and mana back.
Yeah, we don't see this item that often, Tolly, but just hearing you read off the stats in the passive, it seems pretty solid. Why don't we see it more often?
It's kind of a more affordable Breastplate of Valor. You don't necessarily want to commit that 2,300 gold, and you're looking for a specific team fight in mind, and that team fight is going to be this Gold Fury that's coming up. And not to mention, there's no physical power on Breastplate of Valor, and with Sun Wukong receiving those buffs on the scaling of his Master's Will and Cudgel, it makes a little more sense to go for this hybrid defensive utility item.
Oracle's Go elevates way. They've got two wards just out of vision of that sentry that Arkkyl just walked over, so Elevate's got pretty good vision on this left-hand side right now, though Dignitas has a little bit of their own as Jermain and Arkkyl just kind of troll around, but each trying to steal away this purple buff, but it is going to go Arkyl's way. Arkkyl a little bit behind Jermain for right now, down about a level. He's got a wave to pick up here, but it's still not going to be enough to ding him 14. So Elevate's got a slight level lead in the duo lane, but that jungle is the real difference maker thus far, Tolly, in terms of XP. 3 levels now for QvoFred over top of Nika.
And on top of that, the reason why we see that Hunter disparity is because of that support disparity. Still level 9 is Dardez playing Cataclysm onto 3!
He finds 3 with it, but QvoFred's ultimate doesn't really pay any dividends after a good Aegis from Nika. Zyrhoes was smart to hold his ultimate in that scenario, looking for Nika, but as I mentioned, used the Aegis, and then so it didn't take any damage from QvoFred's ult.
It's just all a bait, and that cooldown on the Aegis for 140 seconds and a great solo kill onto no numbers with this mystical male. Variety is just gonna stick on the Sun Wukong every single time, and it's just so easy to stick on targets as an Osiris. You have 2 different slows, and you have a stun on your tether, and then once he finishes off the Frostbound Hammer, he's just going to be staking on you even further, making more ticks of that mystical male.
Trixtank rolling out here towards Jermain and Dardez, but Dignitas is really just trying to do this Gold Fury. Zero starts it up and receives the Geb Shield in return, but as the Gold Fury gets below 50%, they said take the fight. Dardez falling low right off the bat, and Arkyl's looking for the snipes, misses the second, needs to find the third, but it's still not enough despite the good accuracy out of Dignitas' Hunter. Nika's here, has his ultimate, but no blink available. No Aegis for him either, and immediately Dignitas starts to look for him. Good ring toss coming out of Nika, but Variety is just chasing down the jungler. Variety level 14, difficult for Elevate to handle him. But Elevate is not allowing Dignitas to do this Gold Fury despite the numbers advantage for Dig.
They're making it more difficult than it needs to be, but Dignitas are very successful at poking out Elevate. They got Dardez out of the fight. They got Nika down to about half health, but after a few jungle camps and the Bumba's Mask returning all the way to full, allowing this jungler to stay relevant in this team fight, and now with Dardez back in the mix of things, Dignitas can't really start up this Gold Fury despite having this 3,500 gold lead. They're still waiting on that perfect moment, and that moment is going to be the blink on Trixtank in 8 seconds.
Waiting for that blink Cataclysm, exactly. And Elevate is really grouped right now, Tolly. They have to know that blink's going to be coming off cooldown soon. The ring toss keeps Trixtank in combat, and he has to throw the Geb Shield onto Zyrhoes, getting chased down by Dardez and no numbers. Variety also on the backside, but Trixtank finds Nika. There it is again. The big blink Cataclysm sets it up. Arkkyl in a lot of trouble and needs some help, but no numbers is the only one around him. Tiger Sun's going to do it as no numbers notches the 3rd kill for Elevate, 2nd for himself. 1 for 1 thus far.
Variety on the backhand side, throws the flail over the wall. Lord of the Afterlife onto 2. nulisa in a lot of trouble. A lot of damage onto No Numbers as well. Still diving the backline with Variety as QvoFred as he finds the Vulcan in the mid lane. No Numbers has his ultimate to get out of danger, but it's Jermain that takes out this Nemesis.
Trix very low, and No Numbers is thinking about diving it, but decides better against that. The clone might do it for him. Gonna be very close, and they'll do it! The clone gets the kill on the Trixtank. Zyrhoes left him alone. Variety and Qvo fell on the front side as well, and Elevate come out on top. 4 members from Dignitas fall.
Easy win for Elevate. Just too long of a team fight for Team Dignitas to be able to get anything out of it. Jermain still staying irrelevant in this action. And once Arkkyl fell, everything else just started collapsing for Team Dignitas. We saw how everybody, except for Arkkyl, split towards those left side mid harpies, whereas Arkkyl went around the red buff.
Snipes coming through. Zyrhoes drops the ultimate as well, but a good leash above that Gold Fury by Elevate. Jermain finds Zyrhoes, but may pay for it. Arkkyl's gonna make a pay exactly 15, level 15 now for the Hunter. 1, 1, and 2. Nika no ultimate and no Gold Fury for either team. But Dignitas wants to change that. They're the ones who want to get this objective now with QvoFred and Trixtank respawning. This Gold Fury has been knocked low, leashed, knocked low, leashed, all just consistently for the last 2 minutes or so. But finally, both teams going to give it up and go back to farming.
Neither team wanting to really commit to it. They don't have that necessary opportunities. There's just overcommitment by one side at just the wrong point in time. Dignitas tried to force the Gold Fury a little bit too hard earlier on, and now Elevate returned the favor, and QvoFred doing a good job juking out those walls, still being a nuisance against Elevate.
See, Nika's gone for the Runeforged Hammer right after the boots. Likely that QvoFred's about to do the same. I don't think that's going to be a heavy hammer for the jungler for Dignitas. Runeforged Hammer is an item that a lot of people are talking about right now, Toli. Why are so many people talking about it? Why are we seeing it picked up consistently all of a sudden when it saw almost no play with the exact same stats for a long time?
So the thing about Runeforged Hammer, it's the hammer equivalent to Frostbound Hammer, where you're not necessarily worried about your enhance. Instead, you're going for more of your abilities. And by applying any sort of CC, which doesn't include knockback, binds, or grabs, that's going to allow the enemy to receive 15% bonus damage to every other in-hand or ability. It's basically another Sunder, potentially. And the style from QvoFred between this Runeforged Hammer and the Void Shield is going to allow both Variety and QvoFred to stick on the same target and absolutely blow them up. And that target could easily be No Numbers.
I think the other thing about it is that it's 2,000 gold. That is just ridiculously cheap for this item, and it gives good stats as well. The passive very strong, as you touched on. So this is an item that we're seeing quite a bit of right now, but doesn't always fit every character. Need to have some CC though. Nemesis is a character that is usually thought of as having little to no CC, but the slows count for that passive, and you're going to be doing extra damage after both the slice and dice and the ultimate.
Especially with that ultimate being such a short cooldown compared to a lot of other ones, you're able to really spam that off and force out some relics potentially. Still without a second relic is a Nika. Surprisingly enough, a Runeforged Hammer on Nika as well, instead of that Windblade, which would have been an interesting option for the jungler, considering you get that slow immunity against the ultimate from QvoFred.
Yeah.
You get a little bit more health to survive, and once you do get slowed, you're going to be faster, so you can easily bait out a lot of cooldowns if you sash in, and then you can just walk away.
Yeah, not only that, but you mentioned QvoFred slows, but Variety has a potent slow, Zyrhoes has a potent slow, Arkkyl has a slow, even Trixtank has a slight slow on that rollout before the knockback comes, so there's a lot of slows that Elevate could really use a Wingblade for. Surprised we haven't seen No Numbers pick one up quite yet. Has instead gone for the Stone of Gaia to make sure that he isn't going to get CC'd by that knockup from Trixtank.
Which is very annoying because you got the Cataclysm and then the followed up and knockup. And that duration of CC lasts about 2 to 2.5 seconds, making it very easy for Zyrhoes to get off a lot of confirmed magical damage. And looking at the build of No Numbers, he doesn't have too much health in his build. So Zyrhoes heading into this mid to late game portion is going to be an absolute monster against the Sun Wukong.
He's got the Bancroft's Talon, Zyrhoes does, and that Obsidian Shard is now completed. And I think Obsidian Shard is when Soul really starts to become a potent character. Once she has that ability to punish you for a bad rotation, all she really needs is Obsidian Shard to shred a tower. I mean, that's it. The passive does the rest of the work for Soul. So now Zyrhoes is reaching that critical mass point where it's going to be start to get harder and harder to handle him.
Getting more attack speed and magical power with that heat as it does stack up, making it very easy to melt some of these objectives. Variety still being an absolute nuisance against No Numbers, but No Numbers getting the better end of that one, still securing his own blue buff courtesy of that Bombus mask, but speed buff still a different story. He's still going in the way of the Sun Wukong.
Yeah, got it once more as No Numbers secured it for his team earlier on. And while it's nice that Nika now gets a speed buff, Nika really needs that farm for himself. I don't think he can really afford to be in that mid lane and not there trying to get that own farm because he's 3 levels down still, only level 12, same level as his own support. Trixtank's level 13. And as you mentioned, Naja is not a character that can really function well from behind in terms of damage output. Now, taking someone out of the fight with Windfire Wheels, you could be level 5, maybe level 20. It doesn't matter. That's still very, very useful. But if you need your jungler to be doing damage, and I think Elevate do with this sort of team composition, then it is difficult to do so when this far behind.
It took Nika 3 minutes to hit level 13, from 12 to 13, just now picking up that second relic. Gonna be that blink option like you mentioned before, trying to take that one target out of the game, but it's gonna be difficult to really get past that front line between QvoFred, Variety, and Trixtank, because they're all looking to dive you as well. So the question is, who is gonna put the other in combat first?
Exactly, and that ring toss is great for putting someone in combat that is not necessarily even right in front of you, but just near one of his own teammates. So look for that ring toss to come into play. Though if Nika throws that out, then that means he can't blink himself. So a little bit of counterplay there. We're 22 minutes in. Dignitas is up in kills by 1, 8-7, but they're the ones with a slight gold lead, 3,500 in fact. That experience difference is fairly significant though, Totally, 4,600 at 22 minutes, and that again is mostly on QvoFred.
And this jungle disparity is going to allow QvoFred to keep diving that backline. Now looking like he's going to go probably into what looks like to be a stone cutting sword for this Nemesis, trying to get off more damage, mobility, and also shred some of the protections away from everyone. Because if you're looking at the builds here, there's going to be probably what looks to be a shifter shield coming out of Nika.
Could be an item that recently received a buff and really does synergize well with Naja, because Naja wants to get into the back line and do as much damage as possible very quickly, and then kind of is like, oh, I'm in trouble. Speaking of trouble, Zyrhoes in a bit of it in that mid lane. Disapparate saving Zyrhoes from a good amount of poke there from Nika despite the accuracy with the ring toss. Zyrhoes did use his purification beads there because of that positioning, so now it's a bit of an opening for Elevate to punish the mid laner. But if, as far as characters that don't get, you know, if I have to be a mid laner without beads, Soul is about as safe as it gets with that Disapparate.
Absolutely, and looking at the, we haven't talked about the Hunter builds, but Rage receiving a little bit of a different choice as well. You can now stack it up to 5 times whenever you receive a kill or an assist. And once you do hit that 5 stack number, you're receiving 20% additional crit. And this is a staple for a lot of these Hunters that started to neglect a lot of lifesteal, just relying on more of their positioning and not getting poked out to be able to just truly do their DPS.
And I think that we're seeing more of this Rage build, not necessarily because of how strong it is, though it is very potent, more about Fatalis receiving that nerf and being much more expensive now and more of a luxury finish off your build sort of item instead of that 3rd or 4th item where all of a sudden you get to just gas pedal everybody down. No Fatalis is quite yet. Jermain is level 20, the first in the game as Variety gets sashed by Nika, but now Variety's immediately turning it onto the jungler. Snipes come through from Arkkyl, and they're enough! Nika never gets the Aegis off. First kill goes the way of Team Dignitas. Variety's not done as he continues to dive into the backline. Jermain eats that Nemesis ultimate, but drops the Wild Hunt. Qvo still pushing forward in the pick form. Now Arkkyl in trouble. The Vulcan ultimate coming through, but it's not going to be enough to punch through the shield. Arkkyl going to be able to backflip away, but not until No Numbers finds him. Variety goes a little bit too deep on his own, and nulisa claims her first kill of the summer split. And Elevate, they're turning this fight totally. Now QvoFred's in a lot of trouble, forced to dash away, but he's going to be taking some extra damage from minions until that good shield comes through from Trixtank.
No Numbers could potentially look for a dive here. Zyrhoes forced to go the safe way around. Golf here going to be started by nulisa and her turret as Jermain starts to group up as well. And yet again, Elevate at the better end of Dignitas in this team fight, not even losing one single member. Dardez gets poked out quite heavily here, but still staying in the team fight because of the control that he brings between the roots, the stuns. He also has a healing, so you definitely want to keep your Terra right around the corner. There's just more control from Elevate in these team fights. Despite Nika getting blown up right off the bat in the early engagement, they baited out the ultimate from Arkkyl to confirm that kill, and as a result, it was so easy for No Numbers to stay on that Hunter.
Yeah, I feel Dignitas' team fights thus far, this isn't the first time we've seen a fight that looks like it's going to go heavily in their favor, and all of a sudden Elevate turns it around. Is it more Elevate playing the team fights very, very well despite being down a member or down in the initial engagement? Or is it Dignitas just splitting up too much and going off on their own?
It's a combination of both, because even though Nika's baiting out a lot of cooldowns, there's not much return protections against for Arkkyl rather, for Dignitas, because of how far away Variety is from the action. Variety was actually between that tier 1 and tier 2 in the duel lane, trying to zone out 2 members by himself, even using Lord of the Afterlife, going up and down whenever he had about 25% health. In this next engagement, Dignitas needs to have Variety stay not too far away, stay in like the backline or stay in the midpoint action, so that way he can at least still help out Arkkyl if that Hunter gets in trouble.
Portal Demon fell fairly low there, but Elevate didn't feel comfortable full committing to the objective. Now Dignitas going to be the ones to pull it, as this seems to be the theme of the day. Let one team start and then pull it back. Quite a bit of damage on objectives coming out between Arkkyl and Zyrhoes right now, so Elevate has to be wary of just how quickly Team Dignitas can burn this blink. Cataclysm comes in from Trixtank, finds a bunch, and Arkkyl's gonna find one with the snipes. You can make that 2 as Nika falls to the Hunter once more. No Numbers and Dardez on the retreat, but Trixtank sets it all up with that blink Cataclysm. Beautiful play out of the veteran support.
You know what's better than just taking out Nika from a team fight? Taking out both Nika and Jermain, the Hunter. Dardez in a lot of trouble, caught in a 5v1 situation. No Numbers trying to dive that backline onto Arkkyl again, but the shield from Geb is just too strong. Nulisa's ultimate nowhere on the mark, and No Numbers trying to buy some time to allow or make it more difficult for Dignitas to get this Fire Giant.
Digger's on it, and now No Numbers has to use the bird form just to get away. Nulisa already used her ultimate, so no steal potential there. This Fire Giant is in Team Dignitas' hands. All 5 members with it. 11-9 in kills, and Dig now back in the lead after that last team fight.
It was because of that beautiful 3-man blink Cataclysm knockup from Trixtank. Everybody from Elevate started to funnel through because of the Portal Demon bait from Dignitas. They weren't really wanting to commit to it. They were just wanting to get a better positioning for that team fight, allowing the AoE from this Geb to have full effect.
And Zyrhoes dropped that Stellar Burst Supernova combination that is so potent. That's another knockup on top of the knockup coming out of Trixtank. I don't know if Jermain's relics were down in that last engagement or he just never got a chance to use them because of the CC chain, but either way, he was gone in the blink of an eye.
There was just so much damage, not only those 2 ultimates, but also Arkyl's ultimate was used, Variety's ultimates was used, so there was 4 ultimates off of that blink engagement from Trixtank. If Elevate can survive that primary blink Cataclysm from Dignitas, they should be able to drag on the teamfight a little bit longer, but now with Dignitas having Fire Giant at the 28-minute mark, this is getting a point where things could be a little dicey. Now, Elevate's not too far behind now. They're only down 3,000 gold, but there are 4 more towers remaining, which it could potentially lead to a 5,000 gold increase for Team Dignitas.
We've heard so much about how Sunder is the primary relic of choice right now, outside of the Beads and Aegis of old. Everyone is picking up Sunder, but, and you know, we see a lot of supports do it as well. Dardez has one this game, but I think that's a great example of why things like blink engages will never be out of the meta, because Trixtank completely, you know, turns this game around. It looked like Elevate was starting to get the momentum, but Trixtank snuffs that out with 1 blink engage and only 1 Sunder on the side of Team Dignitas, and they clearly didn't need one out of Trixtank there because the blink Cataclysm was good enough.
Still looking for the right angle to go in. The blink Cataclysm is available for Trixtank, but still looking for more poke damage around before wanting to fully commit, waiting for the wave to make things a little bit easier, but it's going to be Nika that blinks first.
Finds that Windfire Wheels ultimate. Arkkyl falling pretty low, but no ultimate waiting for him from Nulisa. She's in the mid lane. Arkyl's going to be able to back up and heal courtesy of that Fire Giant buff, but it is going to be enough to force Dignitas back. Well, never mind. They thought about heading back, but Dig instead decides they're going to use that sustain coming out of the buff to siege this down.
And there's no ultimate from Nika and Dardez, so 5-on-3 in the ultimate category, making it easier to siege this tier 2 tower. There's a lot of utility being provided by that Terra's Blessing so that's not available.
That's what we were talking about, where the damage isn't there from the jungler, and it comes back to bite Elevate in that scenario. Tower falls pretty low. Speaking of low, No Numbers has to use that 72 transformations to get out of danger as a tier 2 tower finally does fall to the hand of Zyrhoes. That's what's so difficult about Team Dignitas' composition. It's you can kind of stand in front of a Hunter, you can make it difficult for him to get the angle on the tower, but when you have to worry about a Hunter like Ram and a Soul in the late game, good luck saving your tower in that scenario.
But Elevate, they've definitely progressed over the split. They're making Dignitas work for every single objective. Elevate, they got the better end of Dignitas in 2 little team fights, and now with Elevate getting that Gold Fury to boot, Fire Giant still around their waist for about 35 seconds. They got an 8,000 goal lead, but this is the 30-minute mark where all the levels are relatively equal. The only biggest difference here is still the jungler, whereas Nika's 15 opposed to QvoFred's 19, but also, nulisa, 18, not on the same pace of Zyrhoes, and whenever we're discussing mages, whoever hits level 20 first, that's going to be that big power spike in the next team fight.
Yeah, maxing out that ultimate is so important for basically every single mage, both Soul and Vulcan certainly on the list of gods where it's extra important to make sure you're getting those levels. Vulcan more so than most, I'd say, because it's so all 3 of his core abilities are so strong and can do so much damage that he's one of those gods that is very difficult to decide what you're going to level first and what you're going to prioritize second and all those sorts of things. Nulisa now finally maxing out the 1, 2, and 3, but still needs one more ultimate, or one more level to max out the ult.
Having to try to bait out her teammates. Nulisa needs to stay as far back as possible away from QvoFred and Variety, allow her own front line to get engaged on before she decides to commit to that ultimate. That's exactly what Dignitas are trying to do.
Nika finds the sash onto Trixtank, but very little damage onto the support, and so I believe it was Trix who got that Magi's Blessing off of Nika. He's going to bring that item up. I liked that pickup out of the jungler. He doesn't have the Purification Beads, went for the Aegis Blink combination instead. So giving himself that Magi's Blessing prevents any sort of CC chain every few minutes, but the problem is that there's quite a bit of easy CC to knock that off, namely the knockup coming out of Trixtank. Very easy to knock it off from a distance.
And with the late game burst objective damage from Zyrhoes and Arkkyl, they were able to get that Portal Demon very quickly. Arkkyl now with full build, committing to that Fatalis. We're talking about the difference in the items. Variety baiting out a lot. He's already at half health.
There's the ultimate though coming out of Zyrhoes, and Variety goes in. Nika went right underneath him with that Windfire Wheels, and now Elevate's on the retreat for the moment. Both Dardez also used his ultimate in addition to Jermain and Nika. That was a big ult out of Jermain there, Tolly. Very defensive in nature, but getting that AoE silence / disarm all at once was so important to stop Dignitas from going in on that engagement.
Absolutely, but 3 ultimates being expended by Elevate, whereas only Variety using that Lord of the Afterlife to not only get out of danger, but to get that damage mitigation, and then taking the portal that Dignitas had, and now they're going to force the issue.
Nulisa does have her ultimate still, as does No Numbers, as he dives into the back line, looking to put a little bit of pressure onto Zyrhoes and Arkkyl. The peel for Arkkyl has been significantly better in these later stages of the game. Early on in the mid game, that's where I think a lot of Dignitas' team fight was falling through, but they've since fixed that issue.
And not only that, Fatalis available.
Trix again with 3 people on the Blink Cataclysm, and Arkkyl. Nika's just has got to be sick of getting sniped at this stage. Another kill from the sky onto the jungler. 0 and 6 now for Nika, who again never got a chance to use the Blink, the Aegis, or the ultimate that was back up. Zyrhoes puts good damage onto Jermain, who's forced to jump away as Variety immediately heads on top of him. Qvo's gonna find him. Arkkyl with the double kill. No Numbers up into the Somersault Cloud is the only remaining member of Team Elevate, and his clone is gonna follow Dig into the Fire Giant pit as they try and secure their second FG of the game.
And there's always risk versus reward here whenever you're looking at relic options. Nika didn't even have time to get off his Aegis because of the chain CC between the Cataclysm, knockup, and then all the damage from both Zyrhoes and Arkkyl on both of those ultimates and that Stellar Burst. Now, that's that conscious decision whenever you start the game, like, do I need beads more here or do I need Aegis? Nika thought he could absorb more cooldowns in the latter, but unfortunately not as successful. And Dignitas getting the Fire Giant at their second one at the 34-minute mark. They're able to start knocking down these Phoenixes with these members dead from Elevate.
Very, very quick Phoenixes. Mid and left side go down. Left side, Phoenix being the one that everyone always wants to get since it's farther away from the Fire Giant. Only 3 members here from Elevate, and they can't chase that out even if they had all 5. His ultimates were starting to come back off cooldown here for Dig, who are in control in game 1. 35 minutes in, they've knocked down 2 Phoenixes. They're up 15-9 in kills. until they still got that Fire Giant for another 3 minutes.
It's so easy now for Trixtank to truly command this lead. All they have to do is wait for some fire minutes to start trickling down that mid and dual lane, and then start taking all their attention into that soul lane, where only a tier 2 tower remain along with that Phoenix. And once those are gone, the Titan is going to be at the most vulnerable form.
Arkkyl just crit that Gold Fury for over 1,000.
It's Fire Giant for you with Deathbringer Rage.
Red buff.
Yeah.
Scary.
He just sold his Rage now for Malice.
Ooh, getting a little
Or not his Rage, his Ichabod.
So losing a little bit of attack speed, a little bit of penetration for just more outright damage, trying to get those big crit numbers to pop up, basically like they just did on that Gold Fury. We've seen a lot of, I mean, totally, we've been playing the game long enough. We've seen a million Blink Cataclysms in casual play, ranked play, pro league play. We see them all the time, but a lot of times we see them, the support just, you know, they get their eyes wide, they see a big group up, and then they blink forward and initiate without their team ready to go. Almost every ultimate from Trixtank has been in the perfect spot to allow his team not only to follow up, but to be safe in doing so. He hasn't been blinking too far, he's been blinking in the right spots and finding the right targets, and it's been a big reason why, basically the biggest reason why in my mind Dignitas is in command here is because of the engagements by Trixtank.
The key word that you mentioned there was the timing. Anyone could just blink Cataclysm, it's not that difficult, but the question is, are you doing it at the right timing where your teammates are in position to use their abilities instantly off of the bat, and Zyrhoes and Arkkyl have always been in position to do so.
Variety first in on this right side is Qvo gonna take a little bit of poke again. Trixtank blinks forward and no numbers disappears. Ultimate combination between nulisa and Nika isn't on time. Arkyl's gonna survive from it as Variety and Qvo deep into the backline once more. Jermain gonna charge out as Arkkyl finds one from the sky once more. Those artillery strikes have been on point all game long from Arkkyl, and Dignitas is marching in, ready and poised to take game 1 away from Elevate.
So this story for these two teams between Dignitas and Elevate, Dignitas, they had the early game, Elevate had the mid game, and then those ultimates from Trixtank securing Dignitas the late game.
It was beautiful play, and that's what you expect out of these veteran players who have been there, done that. I mean, in the cohesion there was definitely from Dignitas. Elevate, like you said, the mid game was theirs, but come late game, I don't know what level Nika finished at, but it wasn't 20. And when you're 35 minutes in, you basically need to be hitting level 20 if you're, you know, a mid jungle hunter solo. So still trying to get that synergy going so far for Elevate.
High risk.